She appeared when I was ready to die, and laughed. Seriously? You're giving up without even trying my cheesecake or me? The words hit me like rain on bare skin. Sharp. Cold. Too real. I didn't turn around right away. I just stared at the edge of the roof, my soaked shoes gripping the slippery concrete, my fingers trembling around the photo in my hand. Her face, my ex-fiancée's, smudged by the drizzle. A memory already melting away. One more step. That's all it would take to silence everything. The betrayal. The humiliation. The dull ache in my chest that never stopped, not even in sleep. I mean, if you're going to throw your life away, the voice continued, you might as well try something sinfully good first. I blinked. Turned my head slightly. She stood there barefoot in the rain, on my roof in my moment, wearing a tight red dress like she'd just stepped out of a dream someone dared not speak aloud. Her dark hair clung to her neck, wet curls dripping down bare shoulders. Her arms crossed loosely, as if she wasn't the least bit concerned about the fact I was about to jump. She wasn't scared. She wasn't solemn. She was smirking. What the hell? Exactly, she cut in. I live in 6C. You're blocking my night view. I stared. Go away. Nope. She walked closer, her steps casual, light, confident like the rain danced around her on purpose. You're Ethan, right? Ex-tech genius, emotionally wrecked, recently betrayed, borderline alcoholic, and currently deciding between a long fall or my cheesecake? My throat tightened. How do you know my name? She grinned. I pay attention. That was a lie. A person like her didn't just pay attention. She saw. And that terrified me more than the fall. Look, I didn't ask for an audience. Too bad. She tilted her head. You look like the kind of man who's never tasted anything worth staying for. I hesitated. That's not true. Name one thing. I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. She stepped to the very edge beside me, dangerously close, toes peeking over the ledge. You're not the only one who's ever wanted it to end, you know. But do you want to hear the truth? I don't think I do. Tough. She shrugged. Sometimes, you're not broken. You're just bored, and boredom is a soul killer. I turned my face away. The wind picked up, slicing through my wet jacket. Then I felt her hand slip around my wrist. Not pulling. Just anchoring. I have warm cheesecake downstairs, she said, voice quieter now. And whiskey. And music that makes your bones feel like velvet. I stared down at the streets below. Then at her. God, she looked insane. Absolutely, wonderfully insane. Like a sin that smiled back. And I'd never wanted anything more. Her apartment was exactly what you'd expect from a woman like her. If you had any idea what kind of woman she was. Warm, dim lighting. Red velvet curtains that looked like they'd been stolen from a Gothic theater. Shelves full of mismatched books and teacups. Dusty candles. Plants that shouldn't have still been alive, but were. The scent of vanilla, cinnamon, and something darker lingered in the air. Something unplaceable. The floor creaked as I stepped inside. She vanished into the kitchen, humming some old jazz tune under her breath. I stood in the doorway, dripping. You're actually here, she called out. A man who listens. Rare species. I'm not staying. She peeked out from the kitchen. Sure you are. No. I don't know what I'm doing. Perfect. Neither do I. She returned to the clinking of dishes. I glanced around. One wall was painted black, the others covered in old movie posters, some in languages I didn't recognize. The couch was deep purple, and probably older than both of us. There were paintings, mirrors, dried herbs hanging from the ceiling, a chessboard with mismatched pieces. It wasn't a home, it was a world. Here, she appeared again, holding 2 plates and a bottle. Whiskey, meet cheesecake. Cheesecake. Meet the man who almost didn't get to taste you. I took the plate, still too stunned to process the moment. She sat cross-legged on the rug, barefoot again, her red dress pooling around her like a spilled secret. Sit, she said, mouth already full. You won't regret it. I sat. I took a bite, and for one whole second, I forgot I ever wanted to jump. Silence stretched between us. Safe, heavy, alive. "What's your name?" I asked finally. She smiled without looking up. "Liora. That your real name?" "No." She licked Cheesecake off her fork. "But it's the one I'm using this century." I swallowed. "What are you?" Her eyes flicked to mine. "Dangerous. Playful. Ancient. Hungry," she whispered. "But not for what you think." I woke up with the taste of cinnamon on my tongue and a blanket I didn't own draped over my shoulders. For a moment I lay completely still on my mattress, bare, too thin, pushed against the far wall of my one-bedroom apartment. Morning light seeped through crooked blinds, revealing the same concrete grayness I'd been waking to for months. My place looked like a hotel room someone forgot to decorate. Laptop on the floor, a coffee mug growing mold in the sink, no pictures, no warmth. But something felt different. Cheesecake. Rain. A woman in red. Had I dreamed her? I sat up slowly. My head wasn't aching. That was a first. My phone buzzed, a reminder I'd ignored 3 days in a row. Therapy appointment. I let it die in my palm. As I stood, my eyes landed on something near the door. A single red hairpin. Curved like a small flame. Not a dream then. I ran into her again in the hallway. Literally. The building's elevator had been out since I moved in. I took the stairs, half awake, planning to hit the bodega on the corner. On the 3rd floor, as I rounded the landing, she appeared. Bright as ever, barefoot again, holding a paper bag that smelled suspiciously like brownies and lavender. "Oh," she said, as if surprised. "You're real? You?" Still breathing, she interrupted, smiling like we were old friends. "Good. I worried the cheesecake wasn't potent enough. You left a hairpin in my apartment." "Did I?" She blinked. "Guess I'm leaving breadcrumbs again." "You just came in and out like it was nothing." She tilted her head. I knocked. "You opened the door." "I don't remember that." "You looked very dazed." I assumed it was the charm of my baking. I stared. "You talk like we've known each other for years." "Maybe we have. In other lives." She stepped past me and whispered as she went. "Or maybe I just pay very close attention." People in the building talked about 6C like it was cursed. Some said a dancer used to live there and disappeared without a trace. Others claimed they saw lights flicker when no one was home. One man, an ex-preacher on the ground floor, swore that when Liora moved in, his cat stopped meowing and never came back. Nobody really saw her. Not until she wanted them to. And somehow, she always had the exact change for the laundry machine. Later that day, my laptop crashed. I sat on the floor of my apartment, half-dressed, tapping the power button like that would change something. Black screen. Clicking. No response. I was halfway through cursing the entire tech industry when a knock came. Not the usual tap-tap, more like a lazy knuckle flick. I opened the door. She stood there in striped pajama pants and a Rolling Stones t-shirt, holding a cup of steaming coffee in one hand and what looked like a screwdriver in the other. "Heard your frustration through the wall," she said. "It's very masculine." "I'm fine." "You're not." She walked past me, sat cross-legged by the laptop, and peered at it like it had insulted her personally. "Don't touch it." She tapped a single key. The screen lit up instantly. My code editor blinked to life. I stared. "How did you—" "Magic," she said dryly. "Or maybe you just needed to stop panicking." She stood, dusted imaginary dirt from her pants, and looked around. "You know, this place is very gray." "That's the point. No art? Art doesn't fix things." "No, but it distracts you while everything burns." Her gaze softened. "You need more color, Ethan." I crossed my arms. "Stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Using my name like we're close." She stepped closer, eyes suddenly unreadable. "You don't remember inviting me in last night, but you trusted me enough not to jump." "That's not closeness?" I opened my mouth, but no words came. "I'm not trying to scare you," she said, more gently now. "You just feel familiar. That doesn't mean you know me." "Maybe not." She backed toward the door. But I know your kind of loneliness. It makes a sound. What sound? She smiled faintly. It buzzes. Like a broken neon sign that used to say hope. She was gone before I could respond. Just like before, I sat for a long time after she left. The screen of my laptop still glowed beside me, a blinking cursor waiting for me to type something. I stared at it, then looked around my place. At the blank walls, the cold tiles, the single chair with a ripped cushion. Everything in me wanted to believe she was just strange. That she was just some eccentric neighbor with a flair for baking and melodrama. But there was something in her voice, in the way she looked at me, not with pity, not even curiosity, with recognition, like I wasn't a stranger, like I was something she'd been waiting for. The past doesn't knock. It crashes in, uninvited, loud as ever, even in silence. That night, I fell asleep with the laptop still humming beside me, half suspecting it would start glitching again just to spite me. The glow of the screen lit the ceiling like a low moon, and outside, the Brooklyn traffic murmured its usual midnight lullaby. I dreamt of her, but not as I knew her. Liora stood in a burning field. Her dress, not red but black smoke stitched into silk, whipping around her legs as ash fell like snow. Her eyes were molten, her back bore wings, cracked and skeletal, and her hands were clawed, but she was crying. Not like a demon howling or a woman in grief. She wept silently, eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. Her face held no malice, only exhaustion, the kind that stretches lifetimes. I tried to move, to reach her. My feet sunk into the scorched ground like it wanted to swallow me. She looked up, and for a second, the fire vanished. "Don't follow me," she said. Then everything went black. I sat up with a jolt, sweating despite the cold room. The dream clung to me, not just in memory, but in sensation. The scent of smoke still lingered in my nose, and something tight curled inside my chest like panic with no name. I rubbed my face, ran a hand through my hair, and forced myself to breathe. It wasn't the first nightmare I'd had since moving here, but it was the first one that didn't feel like mine. I threw on a sweatshirt and padded toward the door, needing air. When I reached for the handle, I saw it. 3 long scratches. Not deep, just faint marks, like something had scraped across the wood. I froze. No one else lived on this floor. My first thought, raccoon maybe, or a drunk neighbor. But then I remembered her voice in the dream. The wings, the fire, the tears, and I felt it again. That slow, creeping certainty that something about Liora didn't fit in this world the way everyone else did. In the hallway, she was already waiting. Leaning against the wall near her door, coffee mug in hand, wearing a silk robe that looked a bit too old Hollywood for this building. Her hair was braided loosely over one shoulder, and for once, her smile didn't reach her eyes. She glanced at my door, then at me. "You saw them?" It wasn't a question. I nodded slowly. "What did that?" She sipped her coffee. "Old ghosts. You know how it is." "No, I don't." I took a step closer. "Should I be worried?" "Not if you stay out of things that aren't yours." My jaw tightened. "Am I one of those things?" "Maybe." She looked me over, something unreadable flickering in her gaze. "Maybe not." I exhaled, sharp. "You're really not going to explain anything, are you?" She turned her body toward me fully now, face calm but shadowed. "What do you want me to say? That there are monsters out there, that I've seen them? That sometimes they scratch at doors they shouldn't be near? Why mine?" Her pause was too long. "I don't know," she said at last. "Maybe they smelled the sadness on you. Or maybe they're just curious why I care." That stopped me. "You care?" She didn't blink. "Don't flatter yourself. I'm just territorial." Something about the way she said it made me shiver. Not in fear. In recognition. Because deep down, I was starting to feel it too. This strange pull toward her that wasn't logical or safe but real. Tangible. A thread winding between us and tightening without permission. She started to turn away, but I spoke before she could vanish again. "I had a dream," I said. "You were in it." "With wings?" She stopped mid-step. slowly looked back. And were you afraid? No, I answered honestly. You were crying. A flicker of something passed through her face, like a candle trying not to go out. Then she smiled. Soft. Almost sad. Well, she said. Don't go making a habit of dreaming about me. That kind of attention has consequences. With that, she disappeared into apartment 6C, the door clicking shut behind her like punctuation on a sentence I wasn't ready to read. Back in my own place, I stared at the scratches again. Ran my fingers over them. They weren't deep, but they were real, just like her. And for the first time, I asked myself the question I'd been avoiding since the rooftop. Who is she really? And why does she make me feel more alive than anything in my so-called life ever has? It started with a knock, again, but this time, it was softer, not urgent, more like an invitation. I opened the door to find Liora barefoot in flannel pajama pants and a loose black tank top, holding a mixing bowl like it was a sacred relic. Her hair was tied up messily, a wooden spoon tucked behind one ear. You owe me help, she said. I'm out of eggs, and I don't bake alone during thunderstorms. Bad karma. Thunder rumbled distantly outside, almost on cue. I blinked at her. It's midnight, which makes it the perfect time to make cheesecake. The storm agrees. I should have said no. I really should have. Instead, I grabbed my hoodie and followed her into apartment 6C. The kitchen looked like something out of a different century. The walls were deep burgundy, the counters cluttered with antique tins and glass jars filled with mysterious powders and herbs. A vintage record player spun faint jazz in the corner, something crackly and slow. She handed me a whisk. I'm trusting you with the batter, she said seriously. It holds emotional weight. I stared at the bowl. What exactly are we baking into this? She smirked. Distraction, sweetness, maybe a hint of forgiveness. For who? Her gaze flicked to me. Does it matter? We mixed in silence for a while, the rhythm of whisking and the music filling the space between us. Outside, the storm was starting to build, wind whistling through the cracked kitchen window. I looked over and caught her watching me. What? You look less dead than usual. I raised an eyebrow. Thanks. It's the cheesecake energy. Works every time. I laughed, a short, surprised sound that felt strange in my mouth. She smiled, satisfied, and turned back to the oven. While the cake baked, we sat on the floor with mugs of spiced tea and no lights except the amber glow from the stove. I never asked, I said, what you did before all this. All what? This building. This weird enchanted cheesecake life. She took a slow sip from her mug. I've done a lot of things, most of them forgettable. Some, not. Like what? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she traced a circle in the condensation on her mug. There was a time, she said quietly, when I was good at making people disappear. Not in a murdery way, just making them forget what hurt. Like therapy? She snorted. More like damage control. I waited. She looked at me then. Really looked. Her eyes were softer, darker somehow. I got tired, she murmured, of pretending I wasn't tired. Something in me cracked at that. I nodded, slowly. Yeah. I get that. At some point, our mugs were empty, and the timer went off. She pulled the cheesecake from the oven with a reverence I hadn't seen before, like it was more than dessert. Like it was memory, comfort, a ritual. I stood next to her at the counter, breathing in the warmth. She passed me a spoon. Taste test. I dipped in and took a bite. It melted like cream and sin on my tongue. Vanilla, honey. Something citrus I couldn't place. Maybe magic. She watched my face like it was a test. Still want to die? She asked softly. I shook my head. No. Silence. Then I laughed again. This time fuller. She smiled back, genuinely. And then, it happened. Our hands brushed. A simple accident. But her reaction wasn't simple. She flinched, as if burned. Her whole body tensed for a heartbeat before she pulled away. I looked at her in alarm. Are you okay? She forced a smile. Yeah, just static. But it wasn't static. It was something else. Like her skin wasn't used to being touched without expectation, without taking something in return. I reached out slowly, not to touch, just to close the space. You don't have to pretend, I said. Her eyes flicked up. Shimmering now. Not tears. Something older than that. Then without thinking I leaned in. Not a kiss. Just my forehead touching hers. A breath between us. Warm. Quiet. Real. Her fingers grazed mine. So lightly I might have imagined it. And for a moment, everything. The storm, the cheesecake, the noise in my head, went still. I left before the thunder stopped. Not because I wanted to, but because if I stayed, I might have lost whatever line we hadn't crossed yet. Back in my apartment, I didn't drink. I didn't cry. I didn't stare at the ceiling wondering what I was doing with my life. I just stood by the window, watching the rain, thinking of her. And for the first time in months, I wanted tomorrow to come. The night it happened, the city was humming. Not in the usual way. Not traffic and sirens. Not drunken laughter from the bar down the street. No. This hum was low, wrong, like the sound of something ancient grinding its teeth behind the walls of the world. I was heading back from the convenience store, a sad dinner of instant noodles and off-brand soda in a plastic bag, when I heard it. The sound of struggle. A crash. A hiss. And then, flames. I dropped the bag and ran. The alley behind our building was lit with orange light, shadows dancing violently across the brick. At first I thought it was a fire, but there were no flames. Just heat, thick and suffocating. Then I saw her. Liora. Pinned against the wall by a tall man in a long coat, his hands wrapped in some kind of blackened chain. Her face was twisted in pain, her body arching against the pull. She wasn't screaming, just grinding her teeth, eyes glowing faintly red in the dark. I didn't think. I just shouted, "Hey!" The man turned. His eyes, silver, not human. "Not your business," he said calmly. I looked at Liora. Her lips mouthed something. "Run." But I didn't. I grabbed a loose pipe from the trash pile and lunged. The man caught my arm with supernatural speed and flung me aside like paper. I hit the dumpster hard, the air knocked out of me. My vision blurred. I thought I saw her. Burning. Not on fire but burning. Her skin cracking with light. Her outline shifting. And then nothing. When I came to, the alley was empty. No fire. No chains. Just silence. I staggered home in a haze, vision pulsing with shadows. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to lie down and forget. But as I climbed the stairs, I saw her. Collapsed in front of my apartment door. Barefoot. Shaking. Her dress torn. And horns. They weren't big. Just small dark curves breaking through her hairline. Faint as smoke. I dropped beside her. "Liora, hey, stay with me." Her eyes flickered open, dazed. "You idiot." "I get that a lot," I muttered, placing my hand on her shoulder. The moment my skin touched hers, the horns shimmered and vanished. Gone. Like they'd never been there. She gasped, breath catching in her throat. Her hand gripped my wrist. "You," she whispered. "You stopped it." "What did I stop?" She shook her head weakly. "Help me inside." I didn't question it. I lifted her gently and carried her into my apartment. She was lighter than I expected. Fragile even. Like the storm had hollowed her out. I laid her on the couch and fetched the emergency blanket from my closet, the one I used during power outages and panic attacks. She wrapped it around herself, shivering. I sat beside her, trying to slow my heart. After a long silence, she spoke. "I'm not human." I didn't say anything. "I'm not possessed or cursed. Not a vampire. Not some cute misunderstood thing." She turned her face toward me. "I'm a demon, Ethan." I let the words sink in. She waited for fear. I gave her silence. "Say something," she said. I already knew. She blinked. "What?" I didn't know. But, yeah, you glow in dreams, you fix dead electronics with your fingers, you smell like spice and thunder, and your cheesecake makes me want to weep. She laughed, softly. Those are terrible signs of demonic activity. Good, because I don't care. She stared at me, eyes wide. You... Why? Because I'm not safe. Her voice cracked. I left hell. I walked out. They're hunting me. And I don't know how long I can keep hiding. My chest tightened. But you don't. You don't hurt people. No, not anymore. Her voice dropped. I used to feed on pain, regret, lust, anger. It was easy. She looked away. But then, something changed. What? You, she said. You didn't want anything from me, not a fantasy, not power, not sex. You just looked at me, like I was real. I swallowed. You are real, not to most people. She touched her temple. I can read them, Ethan. I always could. Their secrets, their shame, everything they don't say out loud. But you... She reached out, fingertips brushing my chest. I can't read you. I can't see you. And that scares you? She nodded. Because it makes me feel something. What? Her eyes shone. Human. She slept for hours, curled up on my couch like she belonged there. Blanket wrapped around her shoulders, breathing shallow but steady. Outside, the sky had started to bleed pink over the rooftops. The city was waking up. But inside, everything was still. I made tea. Not because she asked, just because it felt like the right thing to do. Something grounding. Something normal. By the time she stirred, the apartment smelled faintly of cinnamon and lemon. She blinked at the ceiling. You didn't run. Nope. You didn't scream. Thought about it. Then remembered you bake better than any human I've ever met. She smiled. Barely. Low standards. I held out the mug. She took it with both hands, cradling the warmth like it mattered more than the tea itself. We sat in silence for a long time. No questions. No explanations. Just the quiet understanding between two people who'd both come too close to falling apart. Then, finally, she spoke. I wasn't supposed to leave. Hell? She nodded, eyes focused on the steam rising from her mug. They don't like it when you quit. Especially not someone like me. What were you? There? A collector, she said softly. We don't drag people down like in the movies. We wait. We whisper. We offer just enough to make them choose it themselves. Souls make better deals when they think it's their idea. She said it so plainly, so calmly, like she was reading a script she'd memorized long ago. I didn't take lives, she added quickly. I just took what was already breaking. And you stopped? She nodded. One day I looked at someone and thought, this isn't what I want to be. And that thought alone made me dangerous. To them? To everyone. I watched her for a moment, the way her fingers trembled slightly around the cup. Not from fear, but from memory. What do they do to demons who leave? She looked at me then, truly looked. They erase them. My breath caught. You mean? No records, no name, no memory, just gone. I swallowed hard. But you're still here, because I keep running. And because no one's touched my true name. I blinked. Your true name? She nodded once. Names have power. Mine's hidden. Buried deep. As long as no one says it, I exist. Silence stretched between us again. Then, what do I call you? I asked gently. When I want to tell you you're beautiful. She looked up sharply. Her mouth opened. Closed. For a second, I thought she'd disappear again. Fade into smoke or laughter or some clever deflection. But she didn't. She set the mug down and whispered, Liora is fine. I smiled, slow and soft. Liora, you're beautiful. Don't, she said, voice tight. I don't mean your face, or your dress, or your magic. I leaned closer, elbows on my knees. I mean the way you talk about mercy like it's a secret. The way you flinch when someone touches you gently. The way you chose to feel pain, rather than inflict it. She stared at me. And then her eyes filled, just slightly. Not enough to spill. Demons don't cry, I thought. But maybe this one could. I should have known better than to answer the door on a Sunday. I was barefoot, drinking bad coffee, and halfway through uninstalling half the useless software clogging my laptop when the knock came. 2 short raps. Familiar rhythm. When I opened it, she was standing there like the past itself had manifested. Claire. Same glossy brown hair. Same flawless makeup. Same coat that once cost more than my rent. She smiled like we were on speaking terms. "Hi, Ethan." My grip on the door tightened. "Claire." She glanced past me into the apartment. "Looks cozy. Why are you here? You haven't been online." I got worried. "You dumped me," I said flatly. "Then slept with my business partner." Her smile twitched. "That's not fair." "It's exactly fair." She sighed, leaning one manicured hand on the doorframe. "Look, I heard through mutual friends you moved. I just wanted to see how you're doing." I stared at her. And that's when a second voice floated over my shoulder. "Is this one of yours?" Liora. She stepped into view from the kitchen, barefoot, in an oversized sweatshirt that had once belonged to me. Her hair was still damp from a shower, skin glowing in the morning light. Claire's entire posture shifted. "Oh, her." Liora gave her a once-over, slow and unapologetic. "Ex, I'm guessing?" "Fiancé," Claire corrected sharply. "Until recently." Liora sipped from her mug. "Tragic." Claire turned back to me. "So this is what you ran off to? Bohemian barista cosplay?" "Actually," Liora said sweetly, "I'm his neighbor. And the reason he's still breathing—" Claire blinked. "Excuse me?" "Long story. Involving cheesecake, metaphysics, and possibly divine intervention." Liora stepped forward just slightly, her smile widening. "But the short version? He's mine now." I could see the fire build behind Claire's eyes. The same one that used to scorch me when she didn't get her way. "I don't know what game you're playing," she hissed. "But everyone in this building already talks about you. You think no one notices the smells, the lights, the way you never seem to age?" Leora's smile didn't falter. "I'm just moisturized and well-fed. I'll make sure they know what you are," Claire snapped. "You think these people won't believe it? One word, witch, and they'll burn you themselves." Liora tilted her head. "Let them try." There was a moment of silence. Electric. I stood between them, unsure which woman I wanted to disappear first. Claire stepped back, lips tight. "I came here thinking maybe you'd changed." "I did," I said. "That's why I'm not asking you in." Her mouth opened, then closed. And just like that, she was gone. The hallway held her perfume long after she left. Something expensive, something cold. Liora didn't speak for a while. Just sipped her tea, back to leaning against the wall. "They'll believe her," she said at last. "Maybe they'll start watching, whispering. That's how it begins." I nodded slowly. "Do we need to leave?" She looked at me. I didn't blink. "You think I'm letting you face this alone?" Liora stared a second longer. Then, softly, "She doesn't scare me." "Good," I said, "because she still scares me. But I'm not running." She turned to the door, her voice dry. "Well then," she murmured, "let the witch hunt begin." It started with a piece of paper taped to the front door. "Building petition for tenant safety, apartment 6C. Underneath it, in neat block letters, were the words "unusual smells, unregistered guest activity, possible cult behavior." By the end of the day, there were already 10 signatures. I tore it down. Liora watched me from her doorway, arms folded, face unreadable. "You know," she said, "I've been burned before. But I think this is the first time they're starting with paperwork. They're afraid of you." She shrugged. "That's usually safer for them. You're not doing anything." She gave me a look. "You don't need to do anything when you're already the wrong shape for their comfort." That night, people kept glancing toward our floor. The elevator mysteriously broke again. My neighbors, the ones who used to ignore me. now paused their conversations when I walked by. I stayed close to her door, kept my phone charged, slept light. And then he showed up. He didn't knock. Just walked in through the building's front door in a gray coat and a badge clipped to his belt that read Department of Spiritual Hazard Management. I almost laughed. Thought it was a joke. Until he looked straight at me and said, "Which apartment is hers?" My stomach turned to stone. "I don't know what you mean." "You do." He smiled, polite. "I'm here on a routine check. Just need to confirm the anomaly readings we've been tracking." Anomaly. Spiritual frequency out of range. Very common in Class 3 manifestations. You'd be surprised how many of them hide in buildings just like this. I said nothing. He looked up the stairwell. "No worries. I'll find her." She wasn't in 6C. The lights were off. The door wide open. But the air inside was humming. A low vibration, like a held breath. The candles on her shelves had melted into pools. The plants had wilted. I heard the footsteps behind me. I turned, and there she was, staggering down the hall. Her hoodie was ripped. Blood, dark and not quite red, streaked her arm. Her pupils were wrong. Too wide. Too sharp. "Go," she said, breathless. "He has a seal." "I can't hold it much longer." "Where?" She nodded up. "The attic." I grabbed her hand. We ran. The attic was nothing but dust and beams and forgotten furniture. The hatch creaked shut behind us, and I wedged a rusted pipe through the handle to jam it. Liora collapsed near the window, gasping. I knelt beside her. "Where are you hurt?" "Not badly," she whispered. "Just weakening." "Why didn't you fight?" "If I unleash what's in me," she said, "this whole building goes with it." I touched her face. "Then don't fight." She looked at me, confused. "Just stay, I'll keep you hidden." "You can't protect me from him." "I can try." Her eyes fluttered. "Ethan, you don't understand. If I stay, you'll get dragged into something you can't escape. The hunter doesn't just track demons. He marks anyone who helps them. So mark me," I said. She stared. "I'm not letting you burn alone." Lightning cracked outside. The wind howled through a crack in the roof. She reached for me, weakly, desperately, and I held her close, wrapping my arms around her shaking frame. "I can go," she whispered. "Disappear. Save you." I leaned my forehead against hers. "But without you," I said, "there's nothing left to save." We left just before dawn. No note, no goodbyes. Just a rusted Honda Civic with one working headlight, a backpack full of baking ingredients, and my old laptop sliding around in the back seat. Liora rode with her bare feet on the dashboard. Sleeves rolled up, window cracked open. The wind played with her hair as the city shrank behind us, glowing like a distant, bitter star. We didn't speak for a long time, but silence with her never felt empty. Somewhere past the state line, we stopped at a roadside diner shaped like a silver bullet. The sign out front flickered eats in a lazy red glow. Inside, it smelled like grease, syrup, and burnt coffee. Vinyl booths, squeaky stools. The kind of place where nobody asks where you came from. And even fewer care. We sat in the back. I ordered pancakes. She ordered everything with sugar. The waitress barely glanced at us, but she smiled when she poured Liora a third refill of hot chocolate. "You two on the run?" she asked, joking. Liora grinned. "Just chasing breakfast." At some point, I reached across the table, took her hand. It was instinct. No drama, no tension. Just fingers finding fingers. Palm to palm. She didn't pull away. She just looked down at our hands, like they were a puzzle she hadn't solved yet. Then she looked at me. And smiled. Not her usual smirk. Not the dangerous curve of lips that said she was smarter than everyone else in the room. No. This was different. Soft. Almost human. And maybe that was the moment it hit me. We weren't running from something anymore. We were running towards something. She licked whipped cream off her spoon and raised an eyebrow. "You're staring. You're glowing." She rolled her eyes. Diner lighting. Very flattering. No, I said. It's not the light. She paused. Then quietly, you know I'll never be normal, right? Good. Good? I'm tired of normal. She laughed. Really laughed. Head back, eyes shining. And I laughed too. We were two people at a scratched-up table, drinking bad coffee and hiding from the universe. Not a demon and a broken man. Just us. Outside, the sky was turning gold. We stood beside the car, watching it stretch across the horizon like something sacred. She nudged my shoulder. I never thought I'd get this far, she said. What, middle of nowhere pancakes? No. I took her hand again. We're just getting started. The sign was hand-painted, slightly crooked, faded already from salt and sun. Second chances. We opened it 6 weeks after we crossed the state line. A seaside town with more seagulls than people, where gossip moved slower and no one cared who you used to be, as long as you paid in cash and made good coffee. The cafe was small. 4 tables inside. 2 on the porch. A cracked chalkboard out front that read, "Cheesecake that makes you forget your ex, or remember why you left them." That one was Liora's idea. Locals came. Tourists too. Word spread somehow. Not about us, but about the cake. People whispered that it did something. Made you breathe easier. Made you cry in a good way. Made you feel again. No one could explain it. They just kept coming back. Liora ran the kitchen. She still wore red, but softer now. Linen aprons and wild hair tied with ribbon instead of fire. She laughed more. Slept longer. Let me hold her hand without flinching. Sometimes, when no one was watching, she sang. One evening, after closing, we climbed to the roof. We did that sometimes. Sat on the shingles, legs dangling over the edge, watching the sea roll dark under the stars. She brought 2 forks and 1 slice of cheesecake between us. Still think you should charge more, I said. I like seeing the bankers and busboys cry the same way. You're a strange woman. I'm not a woman. She said it lightly like a reminder, but I knew what she meant. I looked at her in the dim porch light. Are you still a demon? She took a long pause, looked out at the water, let the sea breeze tug at her hair. Are you still a hollow man? I smiled. No. She turned her head. Then maybe I'm not either. We sat in the quiet for a moment, listening to the waves and the wind chimes below. I reached over and stole a bite of cheesecake. She didn't swat me for it. Do you miss hell? I asked. She shook her head. Not anymore. Do you miss who you were? She smiled, faintly. Some nights. But then I remember I get to make cake, and be barefoot, and sit on roofs with someone who sees me. I leaned against her shoulder. And now? She rested her head against mine. Now, she said softly, we're just us.